This is Gemara Zevachim Daf Yod, the Daf for the second day of Rosh Hashanah. What greater day to prepare for the Yom Hadin HaGadol V'Haneira than to be up to date and ahead with the Daf. As we're within the month of Tishrei, we like to once again extend the Daf dedication for an Aliyas Neshama for Aster Reyzel Basra Meir, Siyata Dishmaya, the incredible Koyach HaTorah, especially Koyach HaTorah on such an incredible day should bring an incredible Aliyas Nishmasa to Aster Reyzel Basra Meir. As well, we like the learning to be a Schos Refuah Shalema on such an auspicious day for Gabriel Simcha ben Miriam Ahuva b'Seich Sha'ar Chayla Yisrael. So we're holding on Testament Beis. We're on 8 lines from the bottom. The first 4 line is Nakat. The Gemara begins by a bunch of dinim of Shinoi Kodesh, shechting a carbon for the wrong carbon, and that will be the springboard for our discussion of today. Amar Rav, Chatos Chelev sheshachtu l'shem chatas dam, l'shem chatas avos chavim. Shachta, a chatos chelev. So we have a chatos that is chelev. That was shachat, that was slaughtered, l'shem chatos dam, l'shem chatas avos chavim. What's the halacha? Ksheira. But if it was shachte, l'shem chatas naz, l'shem chatas mitzaira, then it is pesula. Says the Gemara, why? Because hani oilais nenu. Because these, the chatas nazir, chatas mitzaira, are similar to an oila, and therefore it's considered as if it was a chatas shenech l'shem oila, and it will be possible. Bai Rava comes on Rava, and Rava asks, chatas chelev shach l'shem chatas l'shem shechta l'shem chatas hat the Thomas Mikdash u'kedashav mahu mi amrina nekaris kamaisa. Do we say karis as the same status as the chatas? Therefore, it's okay. Odama ein kavua kamaisa. Or says the Gemara, maybe not. Maybe it's not kavua. It's not fixed. It doesn't have the same fixed nature as the chatas of the chelav. Says the Gemara, Ravacha Brei Rava Masni Kula Lipsula. On the first white line, he said all these cases is possible. My time, what's the reason? Shachlas alachatas shem oisachatas, says the Torah, it has to be shachted l'shem oisachatas. Amr Ravashi, the Ravacha Brei the Rava, Bayo de Rava, Echem Masni Tolah. Where do we see the Torah to the kasha of Rava? Amar le anan b'shinoi bailim masnin Allah. V'achim masnin Allah. And this is where we learned it. Amar Rava chatos chelev sheshachtu l'shem misha b'chuyev chatos tam. The shachta the chatos for someone that was mechuyev. The chatos dam. The chatos was chavim psula. What's the halacha? It's possible. But amisha b'chuyev chatos nazir v'chatos misayra. Then it's going to be kishira. And then therefore, based on that memra of Rava, this was the Shaila. Bai Rava. Chatas chelev sheshachta al mi shebechuyav chatas. The term is mikdash v'kedasha. Ma'u mi amrina karis kamaisa adoma ein kavua kamaisa. Those were the two study as Shaila. The Gemara answer us teku. We have to wait for Eliyahu Navi to answer this Shaila. Itmar continues the Gemara 4 lines at the bottom. Shachta lishma lizrik dama shalei lishma. The shechita was lishma, but he had in mind to this week a shalish Rabbi Yechlan Absula Yishak Shem Kshira. Rabbi Yechlan Amar Absula, why mechashev levoida v'alfina mechashev es pigol. It's like a thought of pigol for the wrong carbon. Yishak Shem Kshira. Why? Mechashev levoida v'alfina mechashev es pigol. Number one, we don't equate a thought from one avoida to the next, and number two is we don't learn from pigol. Vaz the Tamayo and says the Gemara, this is an older machlekes. Rabbi Yechlan Rish Lakish. The Itmar, as we turn over to Yunam and Aleph, Hasheich les Abeim Amenas Litzuk Tam Lev Chavim, or Ulaktir Chalav Lev Chavim. Rabbi Yechlan Amar Asura. Why Mechash Avodah Avodah? You can think about one avodah to the next. Alfinan Chosbim V'nim. Shlakish Amar Mutares. Why Imachishim Avodah Avodah and Le'Avina Chosbim V'nim. So this is going to be the same machlekes. So why do we have to have the machlekes twice? Responds the Gemara 7 lines down. The first one line is chotz Iyashmina baha b'amar Reish Lakish. I would have thought if it only taught about the case of avodah zara, I think that's where Reish Lakish says is din avol panim panim. But in the case where we're learning out that it was Shaloi Lishma, learning out from Pickle, which is also Shaloi Lishma, and it was inside Ema Model Rav Yechon, maybe it'll be maskim to Rav Yechon. On the flip side, Yesh bin Raha, Bakam Rav Yechon on Aval Vahi, the regular case in Model Shlakish, Srichi, therefore we have to bring down both cases. So now that we have this Machlekes Rav Yechon Rav Shlakish, the Gemara dives a little bit deeper. Ki also Rav Dimi Amar Michat Masav Rav Yimmer L'Siyol Rav Yechon. V'Rebbe Ilos Hayate, Reish Lakish, Rabbi Ilos Hayue, the Reish Lakish, and Rabbi came along to bring a riot to Reish Lakish. What's the shayla? If you said you're going to shecht at the right time, let's take time apostle. So if I shechted good, but I had in mind to do the zrika al chutz zman, it's going to be apostle. Makom sha'im amar ini sheichet shal shma's apostle. Shachtu amanas let's take time shal shma. What's the halacha? Why are you going two different avodas? Go within the same avodah. Ain't I din she apostle? Is it not logical that should be apostle as well? Says the Gemara, slow down. Mask if la Rava bar Eloi malachot zmanoi shekein kares alam Rava. There we can learn out for there. Alam Rava bar Eloi achi kamar. Uma b'makayim shemamar ini sheichet chosle makayimai shetei kasher shach damanas lezuik damay chosle makamai. It's going to be apostle. Why? Makayim shemamar ini sheichet shalishma shu basal shach damanas lezuik dam shalishma. It's going to be eno din shei basal. Will be the same. Machlokes is just different application. Maskif la. 1 second, we lost place over here. Maskif la Rav Papa. Rav Papa comes along, and Rav Papa declares the following shayla. So Maskif la Rav Ashi my lachutz l'mekaymai. What does it mean? Says Rav Ashi that it is beyond. Excuse me, Maskif Rav Ashi my lias lachutz l'mekaymai. Shkinoig v'chla Zevachim. The two are not comparable, says Rav Ashi. Is something which is relevant always, which is not true by Shloi Lishma. Rav Ashi Achi Kamar Mavamakim Shemamareni Sheichit L'Shem Ploini Shu Kasher. If in a scenario in which you shechted L'Shem Ploini for a different person, a Shinui Bailim Shu Kasher. And if you do this rika for that person, apostle. So from there we learn how and that's going to be the makar that's going to be apostle. Says the Gemara, so that's the raya to Rav Yochanan. Now we flip and we go to Reish Lakish. Rav Reish Lakish comes along to being a raya to Reish Lakish. Later, Zrika Tezi Makava Chaymer. There should not have said by Zrika. Should not have from Makava Chamri Ben Yaya of Mishchita v'Kabbalah from the combination of Shchita and Kabbalah. Mayachos Lakos Rachmana. Why the Torah have to write Shchita and Kabbalah? Leimer Dim Chashem Adavaida teaches that we don't think we can't have one Kavana, one Machshava from one Avaida to the next. So maskler Rapapa, but says Rapapa, maybe it teaches the exact opposite. Maybe the extra pasuk teaches that you can, yes, have a machshava from one avodah to the next. Says the Gemara, then the Torah should have been quiet. For the fact that it was, the Rav Ashi shows us that it limits it. What does Rav Yochanan say? Baruch Achi, you know what he asks? As we had in the previous Dafim. What does Reish Lakish say? Hashtamiyu b'shlam kayam. Itmar shachtel l'shmal l'zokadam shel l'shman. Rav Nachman B'sula. Rabba Amar Kshera. B'hadivei Rav Nachman Rav was chayzer. Why? Mikavachamer to Rav Ashi. So it is indeed a prior machlekes, which ends off that the Gemara is saying that Rabba Lamaisa folds due to the kavachamer of Rav Ashi. We now quote 8 lines from the bottom, the next part of the Mishnah of Lezer Omer. Af Esa Hashem. Tani, we learned in a brayso, Rav Eliezer, chatas bal chet, vasha bal chet, as we saw in original Mishnah. Chatas comes while in avera, and asham comes while in avera. Ma chatas shalishma is going to be psula, av ashal lishma is going to be basel. The makar for Rav Eliezer. Amr Rav Yeshua loy, emamra chatas kin dam lemalo. You mean me arrive from a chatas whose dam is lemalo? There was a line on the side of the mizbeach, and the chatas went above that. So how can you bring me a raya? We pause for a moment. We look at the last Rashi. He says, "What is lamala mechota sikra?" Which we learn in Midas. The chota sikra went around the middle of the mizbeach to separate the upper bloods to the lower bloods. So Amr Rav Eliezer, Pesi Achichach, why Shtam Lamat? Shach L'Shalish was possible. Amr Rav Yeshua Boei, Malavat Shkin Zivani Kavua. Amr Loi Rav Eliezer, Chatas Dechiach. So the Chatas is going to prove it to you. Amr Rav Yeshua, says Rav Yeshua, as we turn it over to Yod Amid Beis, Chazrani Chalila. Goes back in circles, and I'll ask you the same kasha. The Chatas is more chamor. Why? Because it goes the top of the mizbeach. Lamala chotas sekra. At the top, Rashi points out that we're going to go back, and then we're going to eventually come back with a mahatzad, as we usually do. Chazer Rav Elazar v'tanu din acher. So Elazar was chazer, and he learned a different din. Chat as never ba he b'shchita, b'chat says he by shchita. He, it says he by lishma. Then what? Ksheira. Shalei lishma chat is going to be psula. Pesach lemra hu lizvicha v'nemer he lishmai. V'nemer he lizvicha. So therefore, what we shlar by a Pesach that hu lishmai should be kosher. Shalei lishmai should be basel. Av asham nemer by hu lishmai kosher. Shalei lishmai is going to be basel. But ask the Gemara on this Makar of this limit of Rav Yeshua. Amr Rav Yeshua, Chatas never by he b'shchita. He by Chatas it says he was regard to the shchita. Shchita, of course, we know is an ikar avoda. He lishma ksheira, shlishma psula. What do we learn out from there? That if it's he, then it's going to be ksheira, but shlishma is going to be psula. Problem is Pesach never by he b'zvicha. Hulishma kasher shlishma should be possible. So that's by a chatas, that's by a Pesach. Those two work, but what's the kasha? The kasha is the asham. Aval asham, le'nemer by who? Ela la'achar aktaris imurim. But by the asham, it only says who? After the burning of the imurim. V'hu atzmai shluk to imuram. And in itself, if the imurim were not burnt, kosher. So says the Gemara, we see that the asham is not the same as the chatas and the Pesach, unlike Rav Eliezer. Amar Rav Eliezer responds, Harei Omer kechatas keasham. Pasuk says kechatas keasham, comparing the two. Malachatas shalishmas pasal avash shalishmai is going to be pasal. So that's the machlekes whether the asham indeed has the same status as the chatas and the Pesach or not. Amar Mar, we're smack in the middle of the narrow lines of Yudam and Beis. First one on the line is Amar Mar. Amar Lo Rav Yeshua Chazarni Chalila, the top line. So ask the Gemara, the obvious kasha, as we pointed out from that top Rashi. V'lemedina v'laisimad said, Givaldik, anytime we go in circles, we say wonderful. Now we can learn out from both of them. Says Gemara, you know why? Mishum the ikal emifrach malasad hashavashaben kishem yishben. Tzad kares. We can learn out from the Matzad. Amr Rav Yeshua. So Yeshua says Rav Eliezer loy. Emavra chatash kin dam lemala. Asked the Gemara, why was that the kasha Rav Yeshua? V'lei malei. Why did Rav Yeshua not ask? V'lei marim b'chatas shekain nichnas dama lefnai v'lefneim. So says the Gemara, why was that his kasha? Responds the Gemara, v'chatas l'chitzeni kamber. Because not talking about that chatas. Explains the Gemara, so why don't we ask psula? Says the Gemara, you know why not? Because it is Rav Eliezer, Afa Asham. Rav Eliezer holds the same thing as by an Asham, that if the dam is Lamaisa brought Bifnim, it will also passel up the carbon. Ask the Gemara, wait, why didn't he ask? Responds the Gemara, Mechatas the Shemiya Kol Chatas of Shmiya calls what we're learning. The chatas that if you hear in Bezdin, you have to make such a shvuah. That's what we're learning from. Says the Gemara, Shkintuna Arba Matanos. Rav Yeshua should have asked another kasha, and these are all kashas. The Gemara is wondering why Rav Yeshua didn't ask these to Rav Eliezer. Why didn't Rav Yeshua ask that what? You cannot learn the asham from the chatas. Why? Because the chatas has 4, has matan, has arba matanos, 4 applications of the blood. Says the Gemara, you know why? Rav Yishmael, the Amar Kol Adamim, Teuna Arba Matanos. He argues a shitas Rav Yishmael that says that it's not the only carbon that requires the application of the blood on the Dalit Kranos, but rather the all Kol Adamim he also needs Arba Matanos. Says the Gemara. One second, I'm sorry. Says the Gemara Al Arba Kranos. So says the Gemara, wait, even if they both require Dalin Matanos of Dam, says the Gemara, they're still not comparable. Why not? They're not comparable because the chatas you put on the Arba Kranos, which isn't true, on the corners of the Mizbeach. Responds the Gemara, L'temech, wait, so you're saying, Hoika Etzba. What about the fact that the dam is put with the finger? Hoika Karen. What about the fact that it's put on the horn? Hoika Chuda. It's put on the edge of the Mizbeach. Ella, rather, Chan Mitrei, says the Gemara, Chan Mitrei Tlas, Taimi Nakat. You're right, these are good kashas. He has 1 of 2 of 3 questions. Says the Gemara, Amar Mar. So now we're going into the kashas that Rav Yeshua asked. Amar Rav Yeshua Loim Amrit. Yeshua said, is it not for the sake that it's Lamala Meichot HaSikra? Lamala, the Damim are Lamala. Lamali Rav Eliezer, Ashanami Damim Lamala. Why can Rav Eliezer respond? That's not a kasha, because by the Asham as well, the Dam is Lamala. Amar Rabaya Asham Damim Lamala. Loi Matzis Amri. You can't say that the Asham's Dam is put Lamala. Why not? Kavachamer Ma'ila Ma'ila Shi Kalil. The oil is fully burnt, and yet Dam Lamata. Asham Shina Kalil. Loi Kol Shekein. Skaz Marway. Ma'ala Shekein Ena Mechaberes. So you can't learn out from Ma'ila. Response to Merchat Sa'if Techiach, because also not Mechaber. But Ma'alachat Sa'if Shekein Min Zevach. Oila Techiach L'Rizek Rizev L'Rizek Rizeh. Hatzara Shava Sheben Sheikot Sheikoshev V'Dam Lamata. Afani Avi Asham Sheikot Sheikoshev V'Dam Lamata. And therefore you cannot ask that the Asham should have Daman Lamala. Amei Ravami Parzakular Rashi V'Lifrach Malat Sadashavi could have asked, what about the Sadashavi Shem Shkina Inlam Kitzva? They don't have a minimum dollar value. Tomer Ba'asham Shem Yesh Lahem Kitzva. An Asham Nalacha says Rashi has to be at least Shtei Shkalim. Alay time of the Rav Eliezer Damar Krakoina Machata Isa Damar Lamala Vein Damar Acher Lamala. Only this one will have the dam above. Iachi asks Marachatas Naminima. Why don't we say the same thing by the chatas? It's going to be kishira. Responds the Gemara, you know why not? Because lav davka. Why is that oisa lav davka? The shire bebezach. Because by the carbon bezach, which is also possible shema, it could have left out the word oisa. Says Gemara, wait, achanami lav davka. This is well. Lav davka, why? Once it's left out in one place. Says with regard to the carbon, the shechita, nothing is left off. Hamani Rav Eliezer Rav Shimini, not Stam Rav Eliezer. Rav Shimini Damar Hay Makam Lachod Vay Makam Lachod. Tanya, Damim Atachtoinim Nino Michot Asikro Lamata, Vel Yoinim Michot Asikro Lamala. Rav Eliezer Rav Shimon Anushita. That's Rav Dvar Mamurim Boilasa. Oif. Chatas behema hiatzva in nasa ela al gufa shal karen. That's the reason why you can't have such a kasha, because to learn out from the chatas behema, we'll pick it up from the 2 dots. V'siyata dishmaya.